r/NoSleep. Posted by u/dollcollective. Staying with my aunt who I've never met before and I can't leave. I have no idea when I fell asleep last night. I thought I never would. I'd just stare at the top of this stuffy canopy bed until the sun came up and Esther burst in to feed me more. But I must have fallen asleep at some point, because I jerked awake to the sound of my door handle turning. I didn't hear a key first. I'm absolutely certain. But I wasn't wrong about being unable to open my door last night. I tried it too many times. I made sure. Esther came in, just like yesterday, with a large tray of food which she placed on my legs. She didn't say anything. She started opening the windows. When she was finished, I was still just sitting there, staring at her, probably looking like a deer in the headlights. Not hungry? I didn't know what to say. Yes, sure, she had no idea that I knew anything happened last night, but how was she so normal? She couldn't have slept any more than I did, up talking to that mysterious caller in the odd hours of the night. I decided to remain casual for the time being for my own safety, and pretend like nothing was wrong. Not really, no. You should eat. You're like a skeleton. I couldn't. I had a weird feeling now, like she may be putting something in my food, which doesn't make any sense when all signs point to her wanting me to be safe, but I can't help being paranoid. Did you sleep well? I asked, seeing if I could get any clues about what she was doing last night. But she didn't budge. She looked slightly confused, pursed her lips, and replied like the dead. She stared at the plate of food. Your food will get cold. A thought ran across her face. Are you sick? No, nothing like that. The tray was just as luxurious as yesterday, piled high with perfectly cooked bacon and 2 pieces of French toast with berries. It would be suspicious if I didn't eat it. And though everything else about her freaks me out, her cooking is incredible. I hesitantly started eating. She nodded. Good. Yes. It's important to keep your strength up. She watched me eat for a couple of minutes. Unsettled by the silence, I spoke up, testing the waters a bit further. Has anyone visited since I've been here? Her eyes narrowed. When would anyone have visited? Maybe yesterday when I was in town. Oh, I don't know, I'm just wondering if I have to wait till the funeral to meet the rest of the family. That answer seemed to please her immensely. Still no smile. Of course, I'm starting to doubt she's capable, but she nodded very slowly and had something like contentment in her eyes. I'm glad you're excited. But that only makes sense, as a girl who's gone so long with no family. She paused briefly. Michael did come by last night. I almost choked on a berry. My grandfather? Why didn't you introduce me? She puzzled over this for a second. It was very late, and I didn't want to wake you. Proper sleep is very important. Why was he here? Funeral preparations. Her mouth turned down a bit. He was sad to hear that your husband isn't attending the funeral. The sentence had a note of accusation, like she was expecting me to apologize and promise to fly him here immediately. I ignored it. Well, he's very busy with work. So he has a good job, then? We both do. Her distaste deepened. I see. I was just finishing breakfast, and she grabbed the tray, like yesterday, but a bit more roughly. She began leaving the room, but I remembered my plan from last night, get my mother's stuff and get out. I jumped from the bed, a bit disheveled, and yelled for her to wait. She turned slowly. Yes? I'd like to look at my mother's things today. I frantically tried to justify myself. The funeral is the day after tomorrow, and I'll be flying out right after that, so I would like to get started today. See what I'm dealing with, then tomorrow I can pack it all. She cut me off. Don't worry, Miriam, you'll have plenty of time up there with your mother's things. And she walked out the door, shutting it behind her. Then and there, I made a decision. I don't care what my aunt had to say about it. Today, I was going to find my mother's stuff, no matter where it might be, and I was going to get out. I wanted to text Winnie first, but the spot of service in the corner of my room wasn't connecting as well as it had on the first night. I wasn't going to tell her everything. It would be insanely difficult to explain it over text. I just wanted to tell her that if she doesn't hear from me within the next 24 hours, she should call the police. But the message wouldn't go through, no matter what I tried. I had to plan. It would have to be quiet. If Esther caught me sneaking around, I didn't even want to imagine what she might do. Here's everything I knew at this point. Aunt Esther doesn't like me, but she wants to keep me safe. She feeds me well and wants me to get good sleep and seems genuinely pleased that I have a loving husband. But I can't trust her. Either she locked me in my room last night, or blocked the door some other way, But I know it was her fault I couldn't get out when I woke up at 3 a.m. It had to be. It's her house. On that note, this house, which is practically a mansion, has barely any furniture in it. The only decoration I've seen in it is a painting of my mother, 2 kids I assume are uncles of mine, and my grandparents. Oh, and there's that, she calls her father by his first name. Or, rather, she calls her sister's father by his first name. She may have a different dad. I didn't even think to ask her about it. She met with someone in the middle of the night. She says it was my grandfather. She says I have a lot of family living around here, and I'll meet them all at the funeral. Here's everything I didn't know. Where was my mother's stuff? Why did I have to wait until the funeral to meet my family? Why was the funeral rescheduled? How did my mother die? That last one was starting to bother me more and more with every passing minute. I paced my room and plotted. I wasn't sure when Esther would go to sleep, but if she's waking up for mysterious 3 a.m. conversations, probably early. Probably just after sunset. I'd eat dinner with her, say I was going back to my room, sit at the top of the stairs, and wait to hear her go into her room. I'd have to be incredibly careful that she didn't find me or hear me while I waited for her to sleep. One thing concerned me: if she's locking my room when I go to sleep, she must have locked it before she herself went to bed last night. Or maybe she locked it when she woke up to talk to Michael. Either way, I'd need her to think I was in my room when she locked it. I began pulling clothing from the bureau and forming a passably human shape onto the blankets of my canopy bed. If I was unable to find the light switches again, I'd need my phone flashlight. I plugged my phone in immediately. I'd need full charge. Another thing, if there was dust in the bathroom, I imagined every other room was similarly out of use. If I disturbed the dust, she might know. But my mother's things wouldn't be dusty. She only died 2 months ago. I decided that I wouldn't touch anything, no matter how tempting, unless I knew for certain that it was my mom's. Another problem: the first night, I kept getting lost in the house. I'd need to be able to get back to my room so I could grab my suitcase along with my mom's stuff and get out. But wait, if she's locking my door all night, there will be no way to get to my suitcase until she unlocks it in the morning and realizes I'm gone. I'd have to hide my suitcase somewhere else. I rearranged the fake me so it was only made of clothes I didn't care about as much, then packed everything else. Just as I was about to walk out of the room with it and stash it somewhere, there was a knock at my door. "Brunch." Esther's voice called. I dropped the suitcase handle and slipped out of my room through the slimmest crack possible so my fake me couldn't be seen. We ate brunch. I tried to engage Esther in small talk, as per yesterday, so she'd think things were still normal between us. I didn't prod her for any information. I just wanted to get through the meal so I could keep preparing. When it was over, I immediately stood, and Esther looked up at me. "In a hurry?" I smiled sheepishly. "I have to go to the bathroom." "Sorry. I didn't want to interrupt the meal." "Of course. I have to do some work in my room. Would you knock again for the next meal?" Esther seemed slightly resentful. "There's no need to work. You're away. I need to finish a few things if I want to be ready for my project presentation when I get back." She said nothing. Just took a long sip of her tea. Then, "Fine." I thanked her again for the meal, then jogged upstairs, quickly making my way to my room. Much of the remaining daylight hours involved agonized waiting. I hid my suitcase in the room with the painting, as it's the only room I really recognize on this floor besides my own. I slid it under one of the covered couches, then draped the covering back over it. It was entirely concealed. I hid my fake me under the bed in my room so my aunt wouldn't discover it before tonight. I tried to nap between meals. I needed my energy if I was going to spend all night searching, but laying still just made all my anxious thoughts flood into my head. I took to pacing my room, trying again to get a text through to Winnie, to no avail. When dinner finally concluded, my hands were shaking slightly from the anticipation of what I was about to do. I kept them in my lap as much as possible so Esther couldn't see. Dinner was another hearty meal: salmon, broccoli, and a delicious berry tart for dessert. I ate it all, because a tiny part of me thought, if everything goes wrong, this will be my last meal. That thought made my shaking worse. I was sure Esther would say something. But luckily, she doesn't really look at me unless she has to. She really doesn't like me. I yawned a bit, genuine. I'd been awake for 12 anxiety-ridden hours, and told Esther I was off to bed. She nodded. "Sleep well. There are lots of funeral preparations tomorrow." I hated the sound of that. But I'd be gone by then. I'd be on a plane by tomorrow morning. In accordance with my plan, I walked up the cold spiral staircase and laid at the top. I thought that by laying down, I'd be less likely to be seen from the ground floor if Esther should walk by. It felt like it took her eons to go to her room. I heard her padding around the kitchen, washing dishes. And, surprisingly, after a few minutes, I heard her start to sing. The tune was vaguely familiar, like something I'd heard a long time ago. I realized it was one of the folk songs my mom used to sing. The ones she claimed were from home. I couldn't hear most of it. The sound of the water running covered my aunt's timid voice. But I caught a few words, typical Christian stuff. Mentions of a savior, obedience, following the Father. But then, I swear, I heard her sing Michael. The name Michael. And I know Michael is a biblical angel. I'm not completely stupid, but are angels usually mentioned in hymns? My stomach dropped completely. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. I had to get out. I just had to get out. Finally, the water turned off, the kitchen went dark, and I heard receding footsteps followed by the sound of a closing door. I sprung into action. My first priority was getting to my room and putting fake me in my bed. I moved as quietly as I could through the dark halls. The house takes on a whole different look at night. The way shadows are cast through the rows of windows feels suffocating. I made it to the room, situated fake me, grabbed my phone, full battery, as planned, and pocketed the charger. It was time. I took a deep breath and stepped out of my room. I opened the Notes app on my phone and started typing, LR1. Left room 1. I needed some way to categorize which rooms I had already examined in this maze of a house. I approached the door to the room to the left of my bedroom and turned the knob slowly. Half of me was convinced it would be locked, but it swung open easily. The door didn't even creak. The room was completely empty. It was another bedroom with the same format as mine, the same array of windows, but no attached bathroom. Just a wide room with windows that don't open and not a single piece of furniture. It chilled me. I looked all around, examining every crevice with my flashlight. I don't know what I was expecting. Some kind of hidden room, maybe? But no. It was empty. I typed empty for my notes and left. LR2. The door was unlocked once again. The room was smaller than the bedrooms. Some kind of study, maybe? But it was impossible to tell what the room was meant to be, because there was no furniture in sight. I was beginning to feel a deeper strangeness, past my anxiety-induced slight nausea and pounding heart. Why were these rooms just empty? CLR3. The C stands for corner. This room was around a corner. The door was a bit harder to open, giving me a flame of hope, but when I got the door pushed open, I was met with another blank white room. Why? Why were all these rooms empty? Was mine the only furnished room on the entire floor? I tried to stay quiet, but I began moving around more rapidly, opening doors and glancing inside before moving on. Empty. 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 The rooms to the right of my bedroom were all empty as well. I felt like I was going insane. The rooms of the house I'd seen were scarcely furnished, and, in truth, the furniture picked looked random, but no rooms were just barren in the way all these were. My sick feeling intensified. Does anyone actually live here? After checking, double-checking, triple-checking the rooms, meticulously examining them for anything hidden, I found myself in the painting room, apparently the only furnished room on the floor besides my own, staring at the depiction of my mother as a baby, trying to wrap my head around what was happening, racking my brain for any useful information. Even from that young, my mother's eyes looked like she was afraid of something. Suddenly, I remembered something Esther said this morning. She'd probably said it carelessly, thinking I wouldn't notice or care, but it suddenly seemed incredibly important. You'll have plenty of time up there with your mother's things. Up there. I was already on the second floor of the house, and from outside, it seemed to only have 2 stories. But what about an attic? I had to reconsider my whole approach. I couldn't believe I'd wasted so much time in all those rooms without looking up at the damn ceiling. It was already almost 11 o'clock. I didn't know if Michael would arrive at the house sometime in the next few hours. I began skittering around all the rooms again. LR1, nothing. LR2, nothing. CLR3, nothing. LR4, nothing. LR57, still nothing. Then, the right rooms. RR1. RR2. RR3. I had been awake for 16 hours. I was starting to get very, very tired. But my anxiety kept me moving quickly. RR4. 5. 6. 7. I even checked my own room, which, thankfully, Esther hadn't appeared to lock. My bathroom. I was losing hope. starting to believe that what Esther said really was just a thoughtless throwaway comment, and my mother's belongings were actually downstairs somewhere, and I had no time to search all those rooms, too. I felt like waiting till tomorrow night would be too late. The funeral would be already by then. I was doomed. The room with the painting. I hadn't checked the ceiling in the room with the painting. I walked in. The oil painting I'd found so unsettling the first night was now a comfort to me. A concrete landmark. Reassurance of where I was. I took a deep breath, then turned my light to the ceiling. A thin white rope hung above me, tied into a white panel that I knew must be the attic door. I wanted to jump with excitement, but it was too early for that. I had to find a way to reach the rope, pull it down silently, and climb up. And there was still a very real possibility that my mother's stuff wasn't even in the attic. I'm lucky that the painting room has furniture. I was able to stack my suitcase on one of the couches, stand on top of it, and just barely grasp the rope by leaning at an unsafe angle. The attic door hinges didn't creak at all. It was like they were waiting for me. The ladder extended down as smoothly as if it were oiled. Actually looking into the dark expanse above me, I felt apprehensive. The moonlit mansion frightened me enough. How would I hold it together in a pitch-dark attic? I shook that thought from my head. There wasn't time for logic. It was midnight. I just had to move. I shoved my phone in my bra to secure it and started the climb. The attic was slightly warmer than the rest of the house, and had an awful smell. No air conditioning or circulation, I supposed. I couldn't see anything as I first stepped inside. My eyes weren't adjusted to this level of blackness. I stepped off the ladder and onto something squishy, which I had to bite my lip to keep from crying out over. I pulled my phone from my bra, fumbling, and shined it on the floor. I'd stepped on a rotten piece of fruit. So that was the smell. Why was there fruit up here? I had been planning on closing the attic door behind me so if Esther wandered upstairs she didn't blatantly see what I was doing, but after stepping on that fruit, I just immediately began wandering deeper into the darkness, needing to know if I had the right place. Sure enough, not long after the fruit, I saw pens and paper strewn across the floor. A map of the town. The papers appeared to be my mother's handwriting. I swung my flashlight around. The attic was surprisingly large. I saw lots of boxes. Full of my mother's things, I presumed. I'd actually done it. I'd found her stuff. Now, I just needed something to remember her by, something of hers to save from this awful house, and I'd be gone. Before opening any boxes, I thumbed through the papers. It looked like my mom was taking notes on something, though I have no idea what. Her notes were in a shorthand I couldn't even begin to decipher in these circumstances. Was the fruit a snack she'd left up here while researching? Had she been having a normal day, working in the attic, even leaving herself a snack for later, when she'd gone to go do something else and died? Shit. My mom is dead. It really hit me. She was a normal woman, not even that old, living her life, doing this project, and now it would never continue. These papers would sit here and rot forever. I doubted Esther cared to look at them. I picked up the most complete-looking pages and folded them into my pockets, determined to find out what she'd been thinking about in her final moments as soon as I was home with Winnie. I started examining the boxes. The first ones I opened didn't have anything in them. I recognized pots and pans, some bathroom towels, some kitschy seashell decorations, all stuff she'd gotten long after our paths split, I assume. I'd have to go deeper for anything actually meaningful to me. I found countless more boxes of unimportant calendars, pairs of shoes I'd never seen, weird nail products, and more stuff I couldn't care less about. The only thing that pushed me to keep going was a realization: the boxes were labeled on top. Each one had a single word in black Sharpie describing its contents that quickened up my search considerably. Which was good, because it was now 1:30 a.m., and I was bone tired, and the smell was really starting to bother me. I walked by some boxes without even opening them. I didn't think I'd find something to remember my mother by in sunglasses or gardening tools. I was nearing the wall when I found it: photos. I opened it incredibly carefully, holding my breath. There were dozens of framed pictures inside, all pre-Raphael. One of me as a little kid wearing a flower crown my mother made. My dad was beside me. One of us in the kitchen, baking. One I didn't even remember until that moment of me at a local pool. I made some of my first friends at that pool. I knew the keeper as soon as I laid eyes on it. Me, smiling, rolling my eyes, leaning against our fireplace in the ugly teal homecoming dress my mom sewed for me. And my mom next to me, in a silly stance, pointing at the dress with an enthusiastic grin. I held it to my chest for a moment and sighed. I wish I'd gotten to see her again. Have you ever made a wish you immediately regret? With the photo held against me, My phone flashlight pointed carelessly to the ground. Behind this final stack of boxes. Human feet. Rotting. I almost screamed. I wanted to run, but I had to know. Wouldn't you want to know? I wish I could delete those 10 seconds of my life from my memory. But I know they're going to stay there until the day I die. She was lying there. Still. Dead. Obviously dead. Her stomach was slit from hip to hip and open. Like somebody fished around in there. She was in the most awful pose, her right arm crushed against the attic wall, her whole body tilted so it made a semicircle around the boxes, her head lolled against her left shoulder. And her eyes were open. Her dark, curly hair covered most of her face and neck, which I'm thankful for, but I saw her eyes. I dropped the photo. I didn't think about noise. I didn't think at all. I had to get out. I didn't even want my suitcase. I'd rip open the front pocket, grab the rental car keys, and just go. Fuck the airport. I needed the cops. I went down the ladder so fast it's a shock I didn't fall. I knew I was being loud. I didn't care. I didn't need to fool Esther anymore, I just had to be faster than her. I threw the cover off the couch I knew my suitcase was under and yanked the thing out. The zipper got stuck. I was breathing so hard, my heartbeat was so loud in my ears, that I didn't even register the footsteps behind me. Going somewhere? And something hit my head. Hard. And everything went black.